Hannah Murray on TRE in the afternoon.
Joining us on the line now is Sam Opeche. He's a qualified psychotherapist and relationships counsellor with a specialised passion for transforming communication breakdowns into lasting connection. His latest book, The 6 Emotionally Intelligent Languages for Couples, teaches you to transform how you speak, listen and love. The book is for couples who care deeply but feel stuck in misunderstanding, distance or repeated conflict. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's great to have you with us. And such a fascinating topic. It can never be underestimated, the importance of good communication in a relationship.
No, absolutely. That is the oil of the relationship. That's what keeps it lubricated, keeps it going, talking to each other. And then we have to know how to, because oftentimes our words let us down. We intend to say one thing, but then we say something else, and then we go, I'm sorry, that wasn't what I meant to say. So we need to learn how to land our words correctly so that it resonates with our partner and our spouse and doesn't create, as I often say, wounds in the heart. Instead, it brings connection. It increases connection between two people.
There's a lot of expectations in a relationship, isn't there? Whether it's financial, sexual, emotional support, housework. I mean, so many things that can come up as issues in a relationship. And if you don't communicate what you feel like you want or need from your partner, they're not going to know.
Absolutely. We are not mind readers. As much as what one would want to be able to do that, but you couldn't. That's why it is necessary to be clear. Say what you mean to say, how you mean to say, in a tone that is loving and allows a space for the other person to respond. Because if I don't understand you, how am I going to be able to meet your needs? And words are the medium that we rely upon to communicate what's in my heart to my spouse, so that she can understand and then create ways to meet my needs, vice versa. So you're right. It is being clear about the things that we want, setting that expectation right, so that we don't, because assumption is one of the biggest, I call it, a quicksand. Is a quicksand in relationship, because you like a quicksand, you think that you're standing on a solid ground, not knowing that it's going to sink you as you step into it. So when we make assumptions about what my wife wants, or this is what she needs, I'm going to offer her this, or I'm going to give her that, because she hasn't been explicit or clarified what she wanted, then it just creates all kinds of issues and problems.
It all sounds really obvious, that we should tell our partner what we want or need. Why is it, do you think, that it seems to be such a challenge for a lot of people?
I think we forget that we are different. So oftentimes, as a man, I see things in a different way. I have been raised in a different environment to my wife. Of course, we've got things that are general to the gender. So a man, for example, isn't as vocal as a woman. Generally, there are exceptions. We like to keep things to our chest. But then, if I really want to be understood, I've got to then learn. And I think this is where we fall into the trap of assuming that if you love me, you should know what I need. But no, I don't have the energy many times to be able to even try to become that. So we forget that we are not born with this, in my view, with this trait that allows us to communicate one with another in a way that the other person understands. So we make those assumptions, you should know what I need, she should know what I need. And that's why I say we've got to be intentional. If I really love you, if I really want to meet your needs, And in my book, I talk about curious words, the language of discovery. And that the curious words allows me to be asking my wife questions around, what are the things that are deep in your heart? The things that may not be obvious to me on the surface. Get to know each other more. Be intentional about asking those questions, because only in doing so would you be discovering what's in each other's heart and, fashioning the ways to meet those needs.
Yeah. Our wants and needs can change as well through the years, through a relationship. Something that you wanted in the early years, you might not want 10, 20 years later. Something as simple as, flowers on Valentine's Day. Maybe when you first got together, that was something that was really important to you. But as the years gone on, maybe you think, I don't want flowers anymore. I don't need flowers anymore. But unless you say that, your partner might think, she always likes flowers on Valentine's Day. They wouldn't know if that's changed.
That's correct. And that's why that's the place of being curious. I find that it's a trap that couples who are older in marriage tends to fall into. They feel like, they already know everything. I mean, we've been married for 25, 30 years. I already know everything that you want. But like you said, needs change with the seasons and the stages of life. And we've got to be learning how to use those words to unlock, the inner walls of our partner, as we grow together, as things change, so that we can be in tune with what makes them tickle. Because only when we do that, would that life and vitality that should be in the relationship, come to the fore and don't seem to be buried into the logistics of life. So we've got to keep intentionally seeking one another, asking the right questions to know with curious words.
With your work as a psychotherapist, how do you know when you're sitting with couples who are feeling like they're stuck in a rut and needing a bit of help? How do you know, and how do they know that their relationship is worth saving?
Well, often there's an immediate overview that you carry out, the body language. If the body language, is one that is very, very tense, it's almost like they've been forced to come to therapy. It's immediately it's like there's a closed door, and that can be a telling sign that something deeper than what is in the surface is happening here. And sometimes when you then start to engage with them and the words are born out of deep resentment, because sometimes people just store up this resentment, they keep it in, and at the first opportunity it just comes out and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? How come you've kept this, for so long? And of course, as the other person is at the receiving end of those, injurious words, it deepens again, even the resentment, the trouble, the difficulties between the couples. So you can tell by how they're presenting, the body language, usually is a telltale sign, and then the words that they start to speak as you try to engage with them.
Yeah.
And if the words are somewhat conciliatory, they might not know how to go about it, but there's something in there, maybe a sentence, a statement here and there that you can pick out that is conciliatory. That's giving hope that there is something that will commend here. Usually.
It can be very difficult to come back from a place of resentment, can't it? Or trust, obviously, is another thing. If one of the party has broken the trust, it can be very difficult for people to trust their partner again. And I think the way people talk about their partner is really telling. However long you've been together, if you talk about your partner and there's general love in your eyes and you're smiling when you talk about them, as opposed to talking about them and your face is all screwed up and and you're really angry. And obviously we can all go through phases and arguments happen and negative things happen. Yeah. But in general, if every time you think of them and talk about them, you've got that negative feeling and negative body language, that's not a great sign.
No, it's not. It's not. It's really telling that, something is out of sync. And many times it's very deep. And again, as you said, it can depend on what has created the mistrust. Oftentimes, we're working with couples where the wife has caught the husband, watching porn, and it's kind of broken their heart because it was something that they never expected, or some kind of thing that they never imagined that the partner would do, and when you start to then work with them, and there is repentance, so the person who has caused the grief is very remorseful, very open about the repentance that they're given, it then makes it slightly easier for the other person to open up and say, okay, we can work through this. Let me see what we can do. And we start to build the bridges. And then one of the things that we tend to do is start to look at, okay, what are the boundaries that we can create for the couple? And they work together, and it's usually beautiful. Maybe at the fourth or fifth session, you see them working together, trying to build those boundaries, trying to believe in one another again. And eventually, some couples we see come back together and they blossom.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose a lot of thing that can happen to couples is getting stuck in a rut when you're just sort of going through the motions. At the beginning, it's all supposed to be really exciting, whether it's going on holidays or going to nice restaurants or in the bedroom or whatever it might be. And that doesn't always stay. And couples often will need a reason to stay if things aren't as exciting as they used to be in the beginning. And that can be difficult to identify, I guess, for some.
Yes. And my message usually is to and not everybody believes it when I say it. My message usually is that the love is still there. I know it's buried in the storms, it's buried in the problems and the challenges, but I can reassure you that it's there if you would just open your heart. And there are some couples I have seen that then start to believe and say, okay, what do we do to just take out all the rubbles that our love is buried into, and You find that as we go through with them, they start to relearn how to love each other again, rebuild that trust, creating that wonderful environment, maybe going back on dates together, just sharing wonderful moments and reflecting on, what brought them together in the first instance. I must admit, it hasn't worked for everybody, but oftentimes you find that there are couples who are, willing to just give it another go because they believe in love.
Absolutely. And in the book, you talk about 6 essential communication languages. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So the first language is affirming words, the language of recognition. So affirmation resembles what Gary Chapman said to us in the 5 love languages, and it's very constructive. It makes your partner feel like they are seen, they are present. It's there's no telling how much words of affirmation can mean to someone. Especially when it's coming from someone they value, someone they love. And then I've got curious words I mentioned earlier, which is the language of discovery. It allows love not to go stale. It allows us to keep discovering one another. And then there is empathic words, the language of safety. Oftentimes, when I feel hurt, when my partner has hurt me, it is my ability to look at, okay, they said this, but why did they say it? From the perspective of empathy, that then provides me that opportunity to say, okay, I want us to repair, which is another, set of words, repairing words, the language of healing. So when we start to repair, it means that we are healing whatever hurt has been caused. And the last one is visionary words, the language of hope. So I was talking to you about when we work with couples to say, your love is still there. You might not see it. And it's the visionary was talking about the future, reflecting on the beautiful memories from the past that then, allows them to see that place of hope. We can try again. Let's have another go. So those are the 6 emotionally intelligent languages in my book.
And do you often find that one of the people in the couple is a better communicator and knows or thinks they know how they want to move things forward than the other person? Because it's all very well if one person is reading your book, for example, and going, yeah, this makes total sense. This is what we need to do. But if the other person is like, what? No, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to read the book. No, I don't need to talk more. And, really putting the boundaries up. That must be difficult.
No, it is. And one of the things that we then do in practice is to, because our work is couple counseling, so we bring them together. But when we start to pick that up, if it's the lady, the woman, my wife would then reach out to her personally, because that's telling us that there is something underlying. Somebody wants to be recognized. Somebody wants something to be looked at in detail. And we'll unearth that and work with them to see if they're willing for us to bring it together, so that we can then talk about it as a collective. Then that helps. Sometimes, as you said, the wall of defense is so thick, the damage has been done that, there's sometimes no coming back. But we have seen situations where through one-to-one, trying to understand, what has really gone on, gives that person a sense of validation and recognition. And then it then creates the space to bring it back into the collective and start to talk about it in terms of how can they repair, what are the things that they need to be doing to move forward.
I suppose if one person really wants to do the work and the other person doesn't, then at some point you need to have that conversation. Well, do you want to save this relationship? Do you want it to be better? Because if one of the parties just constantly saying no and putting the barriers up, then is the relationship worth saving? You have to ask yourself and them those kinds of questions.
Obviously. What do you want? What's the objective? Because there's no point wasting our time, wasting their time. So that is something that is set out, from the outset, just to make sure that both parties are wanting the same thing. Sometimes you see somebody saying, "I want it, but." They then provide certain conditions that they want to see met before anything can progress. And again, it depends on how reasonable such conditions are. But you're right. It really depends on whether both parties want to work things out. Otherwise, it's a Herculean task.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of compromise is required in relationships, and some people are more open to compromise than others.
Exactly. And it helps when everyone is willing to shift, from whatever position they're seeing things from, change perspective, identify, because. Like the song says, it takes two to tango. So it's not, whilst one person may have caused a harm, there is a part that the other person may have played here and there that may not be obvious. So it's about accepting that, I could have done better. And, the other person could have done better. And then we make a shift from wherever they're standing to a middle point. That does help a lot.
Do you see a lot of couples that have got children? Because that's obviously something that can make a big difference, can create a shift in your relationship. If it's all been about the two of you and suddenly you're having children, and the mother particularly generally is a lot more focused on the children and maybe not giving her husband as much attention as she did before. And that obviously can create issues for some.
It does. There's we were at a couples retreat in Northampton at the weekend, and this was one of the questions that was asked. It must have come from a guy. What do you do when your wife has abandoned you and all they care about is the children? And it was helping them to understand that. Life is in phases and in seasons. When you bring a child into the world, it's not their choice to be there. So you need to prioritize their need. Now, of the two, so if it's a man and a woman, the mother is the one naturally resourced to meet the need of the child. So you need to understand as a man that she's not abandoning you per se. She's just helping you and her to meet the needs of this child that you've brought into the world. Obviously, that doesn't then protract and carry on for too long. So we then need to find a balance. We tend to see things like, I as a person, I have, when we're having our children, there are times I felt like, where's my wife gone? Am I ever going to get her back?
Yeah.
Because she was so focused on the children, but it's only for a season. And I think that understanding helps a lot, to embrace the fact that this is a stage we're in as a couple, and it is needed.
And again, one would assume that all these discussions were had before you make the massive lifetime commitment of having a child together. You discuss the fact that, okay, the reality is our relationship is going to change. I'm going to be more focused on the child. Will you be okay with that? You'd think that these things are discussed beforehand, but I expect so many couples don't. They get married and right now we're going to have children, and they, tick things off like a shopping list without discussing what is going to change. And obviously having a child is a massive change and strain potentially on your relationship.
It is, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. The amount of people that we sit down with and you're thinking, did you not discuss this? How come you didn't discuss this initially? Come on.
Yeah.
And they just take it for granted, I sometimes I sit back and I wish, don't get me wrong, I love working with people. We love them coming because it keeps us going. But you sit back and you think sometimes, if only you had sat together and talked about this, you won't be sat in front of me right now, because it's so simple. And then you come to a place of agreement and understanding on how you're going to manage, that phase of your life. But I think sometimes people just take it for granted. It's going to be okay, but needs change, like you said earlier. And if we don't discuss and look at the parameters of what those changes mean in reality, we're not going to be better placed to deal with them as they begin to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if people want to get a copy of your book, it's called The 6 Emotionally Intelligent Languages for Couples. It's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Sam Opeche, who we've been chatting with today. Sam, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.